Well, hello, my name is Sarah McCubbin, and today I want to talk about something that is a source of frustration for many families, and that is when you have a child with reading problems and it's affecting other subjects. Specifically, we're going to talk about math. So, if you have a child with reading problems or dyslexia, it's very common for them also to struggle with math, right? And maybe they can do the math, maybe that's not even their problem, but often the relationship between reading and everything else gets a little complicated. So, what do you do when you have a child that is struggling with reading? You're only one person. Like that's what I say all the time. I am only one person. I cannot do everything. So I need the resources we're using to work for this kid so it takes the burden off me. So we have found a curriculum that does that. So I'd like to share it with you today. So come along with me, and we're going to talk about doing math with students with dyslexia. All right, so today we're going to talk about using CTC math for students with dyslexia. So there are 6 benefits to using CTC math with for students with dyslexia or reading problems. My own son, who is 15, has been fighting this battle very persistently since he was in elementary school. We have done all the things for him, and he's really made a lot of progress. But when he was younger, he needed me to help him with everything simply because he struggled with reading, right? And so for literature, we would supplement audiobooks, and we still do. But when it came to math, you needed you have a workbook and paper and pencil, and the instructions are something you have to read, and it's like so frustrating. So when we landed on CTC math, he was probably like almost 12 or 12, almost 13. I'm not sure. And one of the things I loved about it was that, first of all, the lessons were short and they really only presented one concept at a time. When students struggle with dyslexia, often they're struggling with a variety of other problems too, like their number sense, short-term memory, computational skills. There's like a whole lot going on, and each kid is different, right? There's not one size fits all. But when you have a full page of math problems, it can be visually overwhelming, and sometimes it makes them want to quit before they even start because it just seems like I can't. So one of the things I love about CTC math is that, first of all, it's on a computer, right? So the instructions are being taught to them, which means I don't have to teach. I don't have to be the one speaking the instructions. Second, when they go to practice the problems, on each problem, there's a little button you can push and it will read them the problem. So students can have the problem read to them if reading is a struggle. Now my son is able to read just fine, but every once in a while there are words that he might not be as familiar with, and it's great because he can hit that button and it will read him the problem, and that way he's, even as his reading skills continue to improve, he is learning the pronunciation of the word the right way, which I think is wonderful. All right, so there are 6 benefits for students with dyslexia or with reading problems of using CTC math. Okay. So the first benefit of using CTC math with a student who struggles with reading um, is that the lessons are taught in a spiral. So grade over grade, the concepts repeat and build. It's really simple to drop down into an earlier grade. If you have a child who has dyslexia, you might be familiar with the idea that They know the idea today, they know the lesson, they learned it, and then they forget. Like the short-term memory thing is sometimes a problem. So you might need to go back to earlier levels where a concept was taught. And in CTC Math, you get access to K-12 all in one subscription. So if you need to drop down to a lower level to grab those earlier concepts for your child, it's no problem. The second thing we loved is that the lessons are only 3 to 5 minutes long. So perfect for students with a short attention span or auditory processing, and it prevents overwhelm, right? They're not seeing a lot of words on a page. They're not being confronted with a whole page of problems. It's much easier to work on a short lesson with only one problem presented at a time when they go to solve them. Another thing that makes CTC Math work so well for students with dyslexia is that many of the lessons are taught with visual aids, graphs, animated demonstrations, and you can, of course, add other manipulatives, hands-on manipulatives, like things like this at the younger grades. You can use these kinds of things as well to help your child visualize what they're learning if they need that extra reinforcement. I love the audio in the lessons. First, that it's taught, right? That the lesson is taught, and then also that students can click that button and have the problem read to them. That's a huge plus when you have a child who is a struggling reader or who's reading below grade level, whatever. I love that it tracks the progress in the student dashboard and in the parent dashboard. And kids, sometimes they will finish the lesson, but maybe it's not up to par, right? Like sometimes they've finished, but you're like, you got 50% of them right. That's not good enough. So in the parent dashboard, it's really easy to just reassign that lesson and have them do it again. And that way, it's something you can just check their lessons every day or once a week or whenever you need to and reassign those. Even many months later, if you go back and you're like, oh goodness, that child did not learn that concept, you can reassign them. And the last thing that's really so helpful is that each child learns at their own pace in CTC Math, which is really important because if you have a child who's struggling, they might need to drop down a level, they might need to go slower, recover some of those easier concepts. Whereas if you have a child that's not struggling, they might need to go ahead and do more. In fact, as I'm recording this, it's the middle of winter and it's been a very cold winter. And so this is the time of year when we often will go ahead and do more math because everybody's inside, we're not going places, it's cold, you just hunker down and get that math done. So for us, that pace works. Like maybe we didn't do a lot of math over Christmas. That's okay. We're going to do a bunch now because we're not going anywhere. So CTC Math is great, whether you're pacing because of ability or pacing because of lifestyle. It is very flexible, which makes it a really good fit for a family with a child with learning problems or just a busy lifestyle, both. As I said, you can add to CTC Math for a child with dyslexia or reading problems or learning problems. We keep a math basket at our house, and in the basket, there are things like these number cube blocks. We have this clock. We have this abacus, which does not fit in the basket. We also have like a cash register with money. If somebody needed something else, we would throw that in there. We keep it nearby, and we have pulled it out many times, not just for our kids with reading problems, but for the other learners as well. When you are teaching a child who has reading problems, when you're teaching them math, it's important to focus on progress, not perfection, right? Like you want your kids to make progress, and maybe um, your child is going to need to revisit that concept in the future, but it can be very discouraging if they don't make any progress. So encourage progress, but not perfection. It doesn't have to be perfect. Use hands-on learning if it's helpful. Create an environment where your child can learn well, whether that is at the dining room table or whether that's at a desk in an office or whether that's on the living room couch, whatever works best. Um, if your child struggles and you have done everything you can, then I would say go ahead and um, look into tutoring. It took us years to actually consider doing that, but having a tutor just once or twice a week can build your kids' confidence so much. And that alone makes it worth it, because as they start to improve their skills, it kind of snowballs. And then, of course, whenever you find something that works and it's kind of custom for each kid, do more of that, right? Whether that's for their reading or for their math, do more of what works. And we have found that CTCMath really does work for our son that struggles with reading, but also when we had one of ours really struggling with like number sense, like really, really struggling, almost like a math dyslexia type thing. It really worked for him too when we paired the hands-on learning. So find what works for your child. Like experiment, do something a little different. It does not mean you have to buy a new curriculum every time when something is working. Make micro adjustments. Don't go start all over from scratch. um, I have enjoyed CTCMath because it works for all my kids. It's very easy. It's on a computer. It, we don't have to remember which page we were on. We just open it up and it's right there. Each kid, their lessons right where they left off. And I can see at a glance how each of them are doing. If you've never tried CTCMath, I would strongly encourage you to do one of their free trials. That's what I did before I decided to buy it for my kids. It's been a great experience for our family. I hope you'll try it, and I hope it works for your family as well. If you have kids with who are hands-on learners, I also have a video about that. I have another video about why CTCMath is one of our favorite math curriculums. Check out all my videos. Check out the links at the blog posts below. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. I'd be happy to answer. And thanks so much for stopping by. I will be back soon with more.